So I have a question for you. Have you ever had one of those moments where something just tugs at your heart to go searching for something? For me, we had this trip planned right before COVID, before 2020. And so we had to cancel it. And then, if you know anything about my wife, she has some goals, and she can be a very determined person to accomplish those goals. And so she had set during COVID, as you know, we all took up strange and weird hobbies and started new things as we figured out new ways of life. She set a goal of when this is all over and we start traveling again, I'm going to go to every national park. And so we began our kind of COVID revenge travel in 21. That May, we set out to go to Rocky Mountain National Park. We had just enough extra mileage points, whatever we had canceled from the trip before, to make it to Denver. And from Denver, we were going to rent a car, and we were going to go to Rocky Mountain National Park. Well, what happened that year is when we went in May, which is typically called like the mud season in these wintry locations, we don't ever experience that here because we don't have snow melting, it's a lot cheaper to go because this is kind of like the in-between time. It's like not quite as nice. It's not ski weather, but it's also not like the beautiful like 60, 70 degree hiking, and everything's lush and green again in the summers. So we went in May, and it was kind of one of those odd seasons in that it had a late snow. And so the last week of April, it snowed some, and then we started checking the forecast for when we were going, and the forecast was for snow. But if you know anything about my wife, Erica, she's a very determined individual. And so she had her heart set on that we were going to hike, no matter what, at Rocky Mountain National Park. Even if the ski slopes were still open at this point because they had gotten like a foot of snow the week before, we were still going to go hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park. And so, needless to say, we did this. And it started off as a beautiful hike. It's cold, we're bundled up, but we're making it, right? Like we knew it was going to be cold. We packed appropriately. The snow was falling. It's like, it could have been a white Christmas, but it was May 3rd. And it's beautiful out, and it's snowing. We're taking these gorgeous pictures. That's the headwaters of the Colorado River right there in Rocky Mountain National Park that trickles all the way down. All this snow melts and goes down through the Grand Canyon, right? And it's just a beautiful time. But one thing I noticed about just like maybe like two other cars in like the trailhead parking lot, because it was not the best day to go hiking because it was snowing, was the folks were like putting on like snowshoes and things like, and they had like almost like they look like ski poles of sorts, like they're like trampling through. And I came kind of prepared, like I had my bean like duck boot kind of things on. So I mean, I had a little bit of protection from the snow. But we kept going, and so like right now it's not too bad. And this is when we were taking nice pictures. I stopped taking pictures after this one, I think. And all of a sudden we're like hiking, and you're following, there's like little markers. I don't think I can see one in this picture, but there's little markers on the trees that kind of tell you like you're on the right track. Like you just keep going, oh, I see the next one. Usually you can see one from the next tree to the next tree to the next tree. Well, we kept hiking, and when everything's kind of snow-covered and the branches are hanging down, it's kind of hard to find these things, and it's also not summer, so there's not like a well-worn path to keep following. There's no tracks in front of us, and so we are just like stomping and stomping through the snow, and eventually it gets to about knee-high, and I'm like, Erica, I have no idea where we are going. And like I said, I was wearing those bean boots. Well, the thing is, they're really protective, but the problem is the snow was getting so high over my boot that the water was now staying in my boot because that rubber wasn't allowing the water to get back out of the boot. And it's now snowing, it's in the 30s, and it was getting cold, and we could not find where the trail was. I looked all over. We would hike a little bit this way, maybe it's on this side. Or we would walk this way, and I'd step down, and I'd be like, nope, I think I'm in the Colorado River now. There is flowing water under my foot. We wandered around like this for probably 30 minutes of this hour-long hike, and we finally called it a day, and we walked back. We got to check off that we hiked in Rocky Mountain National Park. It wasn't quite what we had expected that day, and we searched for the trail, and we struggled to find it. That tug of wanting to do this was accomplished, but it wasn't exactly what we were expecting and what we were looking for that day. Today, we are in the midst of a series. Our Christmas series this year has been To and From. We've talked about To the Disappointed. We've talked about To the Purposeless. And we've talked about these gifts of stories from the different characters in the Christmas story, from Joseph, from Mary, from John the Baptist last week. And today, we are continuing that series, and we are going to talk about the gift of two from the Magi to those that are searching. Each of our Christmas gifts have these little labels on them, right? We write to and from. So some of these gifts might be from to David, my son, from me, from Dad. It might be to Erica from Chris, or to Kevin from the Wet Bandits, right? Yeah. Like there's so many millennial questions about this movie now, right? Like how can you forget your kid twice on vacation? Like, literally, how can that happen? How could they afford that house, right? We've all had what did they do? Like, literally, what did Mrs. McAllister do? She rocked a pantsuit in that movie. Like, she actually, I think, was the breadwinner. She had some baller job that we don't know about. There's so many questions from that movie, right? So, to the searching from the Magi. So our story starts off here in Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. They came to Jerusalem. A little background story here. All right. This is a little spoiler alert here, all right? So I don't want to ruin anyone's Christmas right now, but a spoiler alert, all right? Right here, it says, after Jesus was born, right? So right off the bat, I think some of us missed this early on. We imagine the little nativity scenes that we have set up in our house, right? We have them. We have the Magi right there, and we think they're waiting in the delivery room with Joseph when Jesus is born, right? But it was after, and the spoiler gets a little bigger here. Some folks might even think it might have been not just a little after; it could have been months. It might have even been 2 years of traveling, right? Because we have the story that comes right after this, when King Herod gets mad and he orders the murder of all kids under 2. So there's even some thought that they weren't sure how long it took them to find and follow this star. It might have taken 2 years. This was a long journey of searching. It didn't happen immediately for these Magi. And so we keep reading. In verse 2 here, they ask this question when they get to King Herod. Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. So these Magi, another little spoiler alert, there might have been more than 3. We know that they brought 3 gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. There likely was at least a large entourage of Magi coming from the east. Maybe even 100 Magi came to look and search for this star and the baby born. And these Magi, they were highly cultured, wise folks. They were smart people. And they were interested in science and the stars. They didn't come because they were necessarily religious folks. This wasn't a spiritual pilgrimage for them. They followed the stars. And they were seeking meaning in their life. And so they came to Jerusalem, the place where you would expect a king to live, in the capital city of Jerusalem. Where is the one who was born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. They traveled hundreds of miles over those many potential years. They were searching, and they had this question: where was the king born? they saw the star and they followed. One of the things that I have learned from being a pastor is that there is this universal searching in our lives. We all search for something in our life. In the conversations I've had, we search for different things. We look for fulfillment, for that same wisdom, that same meaning that the Magi came to Jerusalem with. We're often restless in this longing for something greater than ourselves. And this question has persisted across ages, across cultures, and still resonates today. And I can think of no better example of this longing, this searching for something more, something greater, than in the expectation of Christmas with my kids. I have an 8-year-old son named Dave, or he's almost 8. He'll be 8 the day after Christmas. So he really doubles up on the birthday and Christmas presents right at Christmas time. So talk about waiting and expectations. The kids got waiting and expectations down because he knows that he doubles up. Anyways, last year he wanted a Nintendo Switch because his good friend Jack had a Nintendo Switch and he got to go over to his house one time and play with a Nintendo Switch. So that's what he asked Santa for last year, a Nintendo Switch. He asked, I think, 3 or 4 different Santas we saw over the holiday season. So he made it very clear to Santa that's what he wanted for Christmas. And then the list kind of expounded on that, right? It wasn't just the Nintendo Switch. He wanted the Mario Kart game to go with it. And then he also started getting into this, he wanted this VR thing. So we found some headset you can hook the Nintendo Switch to, and there's some games that have VR capabilities. And so he wanted that as well. And then we had to, make sure that he had controllers for all the other brothers and sisters that were going to want to play this game. And so David made it very clear that expectation is that he wanted a Nintendo Switch. And also, there was one other game along with Mario Kart. I almost forgot the most important game, which is Minecraft. He wanted Minecraft as well. And so this list kind of grew a little bit from just playing Nintendo Switch at Jack's house to wanting all these things that go along and complement this amazing product, right? And so we get to Christmas. He unwraps the Nintendo Switch. He then opens up all of the other accessories that go with it. He's got them all opened up. He's got it loading, sticks the game in, and he's updating it. And I think it's probably 2 hours. I'll give it 2 hours. Might have been a little less, but we'll say 2 hours right on the dot for story's sake. He comes back from his room, and he's like, all right, Dad, what time does Target open? Because I got this gift card that I got, and I need to go buy more games for my Nintendo Switch. He got everything he asked for, and he wanted more, right? But yet, are we really any better in our own lives than that? Right? Just on Friday, Eric and I made a trip to Costco. We love Costco. There's nothing better than a $1.50 hot dog and a Pepsi. What is it? Is it $4.99? $4.99 rotisserie chicken. Costco for me. This is my own opinion. Costco is going to be in heaven. There's going to be some Costcos in heaven. It's an amazing place what they offer there. But you have to you're there. If you go literally any time between right before Thanksgiving and Christmas, it is packed in there. It is packed with people. And at any of these places like Costco, Sam's, they don't just have normal carts. They have jumbo carts, and there are people with flatbed trailers just driving through there, right? Packing up the stuff. And you just have to stand there for a second, and if you ever pause and you're like, man, what am I doing here? Even as much as I love Costco, you're like, what are people doing here? This is just wild. This is just absolutely wild. This relentless pursuit that we have in our lives. I was literally, I don't even know if they have these things anymore, because I think we're probably more technologically advanced. Those, you remember back in the day, you'd go to a store and they'd have the wall phone that you could page somebody. I really wanted to be attention shoppers. What are y'all doing here? Do y'all really need all this stuff? Like, what is going on here? As much as I love it, like, it's kind of weird. We have this dissatisfaction, this need for continuing to get more. And we look at more possessions, more status, more relationships, more hobbies. Like I joked about the weird hobbies we picked up during COVID, but some of us, like, we picked up some weird hobbies and we went like all in, right? Like, and these hobbies that we picked up like required things of us. Like, we had to get like the certain cooking stuff to make our sourdough. We started making like kombucha and hiding weird stuff in our closet so it like didn't get the light on us. Or we went all into other things and we had to get like the proper gear for it because we went all in. Like, we're gonna pick up running because I can't go to the gym now. And so we had to get the stuff, right? And our pursuit keeps us going. Like, we're not just going to get in shape in the new year. We want to get jacked. Like, because once we get to shape, we have to get ripped. Like, we have to take it a next step further. This pursuit in our life. And we have these moments of clarity when we pause about the rat race that we're in. What am I doing here? What is this treadmill called life that I'm running right now? And how can I ever keep it up? And so we look at our possessions, our relationships, our statuses, our hobbies. For some of us, it's even a little different than that. When we take it just a little further, we make our hobbies just a little weirder. We chase that next buzz, that next thing that will make us numb, and that won't be quite enough. And we come back to this question that the Magi asked. Where is the one that's born King of the Jews? Because we've come to worship him. We've come to worship him. So the Magi, they journey to Jesus. They're directed to Bethlehem, guided by a star. And they come with overwhelming joy upon finding Jesus. This is what the scriptures say when we keep reading. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that they had seen ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, of incense, and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So when they show up, they did an act of worship. They bowed down. Other translations use the word they kneeled down. They went to the ground. They worshiped the king when they got there, and they offered up Jesus, their treasures. They offered that gold, the frankincense, and myrrh. And they acknowledged that Jesus was the most important, most valuable gift. Jesus was the fulfillment of the search they had been searching for. So here's the thing. We often search for it, right? We search for it, but we don't always know what that it is. We search for it, but we don't know what that it is. When the Magi set off, they knew what they were searching for. They were searching for the king. The path that they went on didn't always meet the expectations, but they knew who they were searching for, the king. They went searching for the king in Jerusalem because that's where they expected a king to be. They knew who the it was. When we go searching, do we even know what we're searching for? For them, Jesus was the fulfillment of their search, the longing of what they were searching for. And they worshiped because it was in recognition of the ultimate gift that Jesus gives us. There's a story from the winter of 1914. Soldiers had been fighting for now 5 months, 5 long months, fighting that never expected to last that long. And in the winter of 1914, soldiers were in trenches. And when it's winter, things are wet, just like my hiking. Things are wet. And there was the smell of death in the air. And that night, German soldiers started singing Stille Nacht, Silent Night. And the other side of no man's land, in other trenches, British soldiers started to hear the song of Stille Nacht, Silent Night. And at first they were worried that this might be some sort of trap on Christmas Eve. Because just a few hours before there was fighting going on. And they heard the words of Silent Night. And slowly some of them began to join in. And then one brave British soldier stood up out of the trench and, using a sign of peace, the white flag, stood up and started to walk towards the other line. And eventually the German soldiers got up out of their trench as well. And they met in that no man's land in between the two trenches. And in that moment, they shook hands, they conversed. There's even stories of some Christmas presents being exchanged. They traded cigarettes. They traded buttons off each other's jackets because they liked the other one's jacket buttons. There's stories of a soccer game taking place in the very spot where they were fighting just hours before. That Christmas of 1914, the soldiers put down their arms and they found peace in that moment. Because they knew they were searching for something greater they could never find laying in a trench. And as the fighting stopped for that one day, their commanders kind of got upset about this. And so they never wanted this to happen again. And so when World War I continued into the next year and the Christmas of 1915 happened, they didn't want peace for a truce to happen like it did in 1914. And so the generals intensified fighting the next year in the days leading up to Christmas, so there would not be able to be peace. The Christmas truce of 1914 lives on in that story of two sides putting down their arms, even if it was just for that day. Because it's a glimpse, a possibility of what can happen. And on that same battlefield today, there's a monument of two hands shaking to represent this story of what can happen when we let the Christmas that we're really searching for enter our hearts. And we lay down all those other things that we are carrying with us, those things that we're searching for, and we are going to search for that ultimate gift, the ultimate gift. For you, maybe it is putting down some arms, sharing a cigarette, and playing a soccer game today. I don't know if that is. But this Christmas is an opportunity to put down that search, to search for what is actually going to make an ultimate difference in our lives, that ultimate gift. And so would you join me in prayer right now? God, we come to you today knowing that there are so many things that we search for, so many things that we seek fulfillment out in, whether it's our relationships, our status, our jobs, that next drink, whatever it is, God, we keep coming up empty. And God, we know that there's got to be something more. There's something more in our lives that we are longing for, something that won't leave us empty. And God, it is you. God, some of us this Christmas need a miracle. We need a Christmas miracle in our lives. God, we see the hurt around us. We ourselves are hurting. God, enter into our lives in a miraculous way this Christmas. Do something only you can do. God, we give it to you. We lay down our treasures right here for you, so you can do that miracle. God, we pray